Now, Nigeria's inflation has remained resistant as headline inflation hit 33.95% in May 2024, and food inflation rose to 40.66%. The National Bureau of Statistics disclosed in its Consumer Price Index statistical report for the month under review that inflation rate showed an increase of 0.26 percent points when compared to April 2024 headline inflation rate. With the Eid-el-Kabir celebration still ongoing, economy watchers predict prices to soar further in the month of June. One of such analysts is Adakole Ijogi, a political analyst who is with us in the studio to discuss the inflationary trends. It's so good to have you join us on the program this morning. You're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Great. Looking at the figures we just mentioned in that background, inflation rates now about 34%. Please, can you tell us the push and pull factors? How did we get here? How should we get out of here?
Well, most economists will always put inflation, describe it either in cost pull or demand push inflation. I think I'd rather say that it is actually, for me, looking at the Nigerian situation, I'd rather say it is policy-driven inflation.
Yes. How do you mean?
Yeah, because if you look at inflationary trends in Nigeria, essentially, especially, people always go back to the removal of fuel subsidy. I want to just, which is good, but I want to go slightly further or behind, which is the printing of naira, of monies by the previous administration, to the tune of close to 30 trillion naira. Now, when you print that kind of money and put it into circulation, that's what you have. Now, that printing is policy. Removal of fuel subsidy is policy. Floating of the naira is policy. So I'd rather say it is policy-driven inflation that is, and the thing about economists is that the policy you take today shows up in 2 or 3, 4 months, sometimes even a year. It doesn't come out immediately because it takes time for it to grind. Because when you look at what happened in the monetary policy of the CBN, led by the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, you will understand that part of the things that this administration had to inherit or are grappling with are poor policy choice of the previous administration. That's not
were they really poor policies? Yes, the impact is being felt differently. Some of these policies are being made with good intention. Implementation at times hampers. Economic dynamics, the global dynamics also affect implementation of some of these policies as they were. And with the coming of this administration, we've seen a deliberate attempt to study what has been done in the past, not just the past administrations, but administrations before the past administrations. Economic policies have been put on ground. How have they worked? How have they impacted on the growth of the economy? Nigeria's economy has been resilient, if you will agree with me. Take, for instance, COVID-19, post-COVID-19, our recovery, while other countries in the West actually went out of circulation in terms of the best ways to grow their economies. Nigeria had a resilient economy that got us to this point. Yes, subsidy had to be removed, and government have given us reasons why the subsidy had to be removed. Now, yes, the inflation figures are growing, highest in 28 years. But with the policies on ground, what's your assessment of the way they are going? Yes, Nigerians, we are not that very patient. We expect immediate impacts, but how should we go about it?
Well, I think I would slightly disagree, because after post-COVID, we had Nigeria's economy slipped into a recession, if you remember. But anyway, that's moving forward. I think that the issue I have with our economic handlers in Nigeria is that we do not pay critical attention to the value of the currency. Hence, when you miss the opportunity to stabilize the currency amidst the different vagaries that you have in the economy, and the economy is unstable, you keep having that problem. And I have a slightly different take when it comes to removal of fuel subsidy. Okay. I think that the removal of the fuel subsidy, it should be removed, yes. The question is, how should it be removed? And I think that the way the president did it on May 29th, I think it was a little bit too harsh. Because, first and foremost, the president didn't have an economic team in place. Secondly, there was no documents, no plan to say this is it. These are the policy that you want to drive. I mean, the Minister for Finance and a coordinating Minister for Economy only came up with a plan that they called ASAP just a couple of days ago. I think that is not acceptable for any country.
Are you sure you've been following events the way they were? The plans on ground, we had a committee that was to see into the transition of the removal of fuel subsidy and the buffers to ameliorate, to cushion the effect of the impact.
That is after the announcement was made. That's after the announcement was made.
But if you look at the 2023 budget, up to the supplementary budget, subsidy was already removed. Then the announcement on that day, May 29, 2023. But if you look at
my brother, that argument is a chicken and egg argument, because when the administration came in May 2023, they sent to the National Assembly a supplementary budget. So this argument of saying that it wasn't in the budget, it was already removed, I don't think it's an intelligent one, because you could have sent that same supplementary budget to the National Assembly to include fuel subsidy. That's not an intelligent argument. Please, let's move on. It's not intelligent at all. I think that the government can do more. What we are saying, that fuel subsidy needs to be removed, yes. But I tell you, the NNPCL said that Nigeria consumes 80 million liters a day. Now you know that is not true, because most of it is going to Cameroon, Gabon, Niger, Togo and all of that. So you clean up the inefficiencies and corruption that you have inside. You don't punish Nigerians by removing the fuel subsidy. I slightly disagree. When you clean up the inefficiencies and corruption in that sector, then you now remove the subsidy, because we now know how much exactly.
Agreed with you.
Correct.
I agree with you very well on this point. And now what I'm saying is that we have moved from that point. We're now looking for solutions. Those were the challenges. Those were the problems on ground. Now with solutions on ground, with inflationary trends year on year on the increase, but if you look at month on month, we are making a traction. We are seeing some level of reduction. What do you think as an economist should be done further to ensure that these inflationary trends are reduced, or like there's a downtrend to it?
Well, unfortunately, there are no silver bullets. Even across the world, in the UK, in the US, there are inflationary pressures within the economy. But you see, each economy is different. In Nigeria, for instance, I don't think that raising interest rates is the highest. I mean, the last 30 years interest rates. I don't think it should be part of the solution. Now, the reason I say this is because when you look at the Nigerian financial system, you know that close to, according to the World Bank, about 67% of the Nigerian economy is in the informal sector. And if you look at the number of Nigerians that are banked, so whether you raise or decrease interest rates, it really does not affect liquidity in the system, because most times Nigerian economy is a heavily cash-dependent economy. So I think that to stabilize inflationary trends, we have to focus on the fundamentals of the economy. We have to stabilize the economy. We don't need all these knee-jerk arrangements, all these shock policies that you have. You need to have macroeconomic stability. Now, when you have that macroeconomic stability,
how we get to that point? Talking about what are those measures that need to be taken? Yes, you said increasing interest rates is not the way to go. It doesn't, according to your view, it doesn't really mop up the alleged liquidity that is out there. What do you think should be done? Yes, so much has been said about increasing food production, reducing electricity tariff, talking about cost of energy and all of that. What are those macroeconomic measures that should be taken at this point?
I think it's the same thing. I'm saying the same thing. I think that we need to focus on building the Nigerian economy, production. And then for me, I will repeat for the opt-in time, it should be economic thinking that should be driving political processes, not political processes driving economic thinking. I'm saying that we should have a plan to say, this is what we're going to do in the next 3 years. We're going to invest X amount in fertilizer, X amount in land clearing, X amount in small and medium scale businesses, X amount. We just have to get Nigeria producing. We just have to. There's no two ways about it. There's no cutting cost about it. You can't dodge it. It's something that the government must do. And like I say, the time for making policies on inside the offices with ACs and all that is over. The government needs to roll up its sleeve and directly intervene in the economy. This is not the time. Look at what Governor Bago is doing in Niger State. Now, that's an example of how to intervene in an economy. You cannot just stimulate the economy now. No, you have to intervene directly. Government has to provide tractors, provide fertilizers, get bulk farmers into cooperatives, small and medium scale farmers. You have to do land clearing, give Nigerians land to farm. The government has to put G2G partnerships, government to government partnerships, where food production and agriculture can take place. There's so much that can be done, but you need a plan to do it. The reason you are seeing...
I've mentioned what Niger State is doing with Bago. You agree with me that we have states like Maiduguri, Jigawa, and some other states dotted around the country doing that. That is the role of the subnationals. And when you come to the federal government, there are lots of interventions ongoing, particularly the ongoing 200 billion intervention to the Bank of Industry. How do you see that impacting on MSMEs and getting Nigerians to really go to the farms and just get to involve in smaller businesses that they are boosting capacity for a little bit more production?
You know, well, while I commend the federal government for that 200 billion to the Bank of Industry, I think that that subsector of the economy is a little bit disorganized. You now have multiple government agencies. No, agencies. You have Bank of Industry. You have Bank of You have Agric Bank. You have manufacturers associations. You have different small and medium scale businesses associations. I think that that ecosystem needs to be plugged together nicely. And if you ask me, I think that ecosystem also needs to be digitized, because the problem when you have with lending to small and medium scale businesses is that most people don't actually use those loans for actual production. But if you digitize and you properly monitor and then you clean up the ecosystem so that you don't have those overlapping roles. You know, you talk about Bank of Industry, you talk about Bank of Agriculture, you talk about Nigerian Economic Council, all those organizations, all those government parastatals. I think that the Ministry of Finance needs to come into that space and now define their roles very clearly and nicely, so that like I said, you need to digitize that sector so that we can actually track these loans and ensure that they are spent in actual production of goods and services that they are meant for.
Okay, talking about harmonizing all of these sectors, what is the role of the subnational in all of this? We often just concentrate on what the federal government should do. Yes, the federal government is doing its own bit. What about the role of the subnationals in complementing these efforts to ensure that it's an all-round thing?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that, like I mentioned, like I said G2G partnerships. That simply means government to government partnerships. At the stage which the Nigerian economy is right now, the federal government must partner with state governments and local governments. Like I said, it's not about making policies right now and to stimulate the economy. Government has to intervene. And because the federal government doesn't own land, it's the state government that owns land. So if the state government own land and then the actual production processes in the factor of production is in the local government, the local government, federal government must partner with these subnationals to ensure that production takes place. But if you leave it to the subnationals, which I think they're not even doing much. Now they say that they claim to have encumbrances like Land Use Act, the sharing formula and stuff like that. I think that we need to do some level of devolution of powers to the state government so that they can be armed to actually engage in productive activities, as it were. Because right now, I mean, the federal government is even collecting monies, taxes from plate numbers and driver's license and stuff like that, which I don't think is essential. I mean, how can you say I own land in my own place and what is beneath the land is something that I cannot access? I have to go to the federal government to get licensing to go and mine or stuff like that. I don't think that is appropriate. We need to amend our laws.
Thank you so very much, Adakole Ijogi, political economist, with your own insight, at this particular point in time. And the takeaway for me is for us not to sit in the comforts of our rooms or our offices to take decisions, but get to the field and get working to ensure that production is increased. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Great.